Welcome to the new episode of All That Jazz. I'm your host, Matyash, and I have with me Irene Wine. I think I pronounced that right.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to the podcast. I think I discovered you on YouTube randomly some time ago, and now here you are. We're talking.
Now here I am.
So, your background is in psychology, right?
Yeah.
So what got you interested in psychology? Why you got into it?
I would love to tell you about that and a little bit about myself. So, yeah, my name is Erienne, and I am Dr. Erienne Weine. My PhD is in psychology. So, specifically, the part of psychology that is research. So, I'm interested in the academic question of how the mind works. So, my specialty is in cognitive psychology or cognitive science. And so basically, the reason that I'm interested in that field is that it answers the exact type of question that I personally am the most passionate about.
Hmm.
So, what I really love and care about is the basic question of how our mind works. So, these are questions like, what does it mean to pay attention? How do we get conscious access to our reality? How do we sense the world? What are our concepts like, and how does memory work? And that like underlying basis of our mental world, that is my passion and what I've researched, and I've applied so many things that I've learned to my own life, and I absolutely love talking about them. So thank you for finding me and giving me a space to talk about them with you. I am very excited for our conversation.
Cool, cool. You're welcome. Um, so PhD, that's the top ladder of academia, isn't it? Like PhD is the top level you can get.
It's the top level you can get in America. I think they have a higher level in other countries that just dedicate that, like, indicates different levels of learning or different dedication to your field. But as far as like training goes, yes, I went as far as I could.
Hmm. I want to apologize for my voice. I don't know what's happening today. It just started like an hour before we ran
Do you and I
online,
graphic voice?
but that's it is what it is. It sounds a bit weird, maybe.
Happened to me.
Um, let's see. So what? Let's talk about memory because last time when we
Sure.
spoke off air, I have my hypothesis about it. I think it's like if, especially if there's a very emotional charged memory, it would seem that that memory would change the more you rehash it because might add things on. Is that borne by research as well?
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we had a great conversation about that. And yeah, talk about it more. Oh my gosh. Yeah, emotion and memory is like so ridiculous because like they're almost like completely opposite ends of ourselves. Like
Mm.
our mental self is very detailed and specific, and we trust our mind and our memory to be accurate and correct. On the
Yeah.
other hand, emotions are like uncontrollable and super powerful and all over the place, and shockingly it turns out they do influence each other.
Right. Who knew?
Who knew these systems were compatible? Are they? I don't know. I don't think so.
Right. So, so the more, so is there any like research like specifically about uh, if somebody has a negative memory of something that they change it in a negative way, and vice versa? If there's a positive one that they omit the negative ones and they see only the positive.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we do. So, your question makes me think of this really cool research that is done in memory as it relates to emotion that I would love to talk about for just a second.
Let's go.
And I think I mentioned this last time we talked, but they did these awesome research studies where they were looking at the role of emotion in memory. And the overall picture is that just because emotions are so strong, they're so energetically strong, they actually lead to stronger memories.
Hmm.
So, anytime that you're experiencing a powerful emotion, whether it's positive or negative, it's going to lead to us solidifying whatever is going on in our experience to a greater level. So we have a stronger memory. So, like from our usual experience, like if you just ask people like to talk about their memories of their recent past, what is most likely for everybody is we talk about the most emotional content.
Right.
And the reason for that is those are actually stronger memories, but also like we like being activated by our emotions.
Mm.
So what they did in this research, however, is they decoupled the emotion from the actual content. So the way that they did this is that they had people, so there's many different versions of the study I'm going to talk about, but I'm just going to give one example, is they have people read a piece of paper that has information on it, and they're like, hey, I need you to memorize what's on this piece of paper. Right? Seems simple. Meanwhile, they're making the person who's reading the paper go walk out on a bridge over like a canyon. So, so it's absolutely, I mean, for me, that would be absolutely terrifying because I have a fear of heights. So like, I don't have an insane fear of heights, but I have some fear of heights. So if you make me like walk out on that bridge, the idea is like that activates your emotion. You're scared. Meanwhile, you're supposed to do something completely separate, which is like read and memorize this piece of paper. So that was the experimental condition. In a control condition, they have people walk out on a bridge that's not over a chasm, like it's just like a couple feet off of the ground. And they're asked to memorize the paper. And what they found is that the people who were memorizing, you know, the text on that paper, who walked out over the scary bridge, had a much stronger memory that lasted longer.
Wow.
Yes.
So maybe we should do extreme sports while we're studying for university, like bungee jumping. Can you imagine? You're studying, you have an audiobook in your head and you do a skydive.
That's hilarious. I love that. People remember it more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be although that would be costly research because you'd have to fly people up and drop them and then fly them again and drop them for the whole audiobook. You do that for months.
Oh, for research. I had to do this for research.
Oh yeah, of course. As long as we get the grant, we're fine. We need to get the grant, and then we'll go.
Then we'll worry about finding the participants.
Yeah. As long as they don't die, the parachute needs to work, and that's all we care about.
If you need help writing that consent form, you let me know.
Would that be ethically troubling, that study?
I already feel ethically troubled just talking about that.
Well, wait, if they consent to it, it should be okay. If we take,
it should be fine, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people die of this, but rarely. If you take precautions, then it should be fine.
Get your skydivers training and read a book and participate in research all at the same time.
Yes, it would be like Tom Cruise, that he does some movies, he skydives a lot, so he's become an expert in that. So,
oh, very cool.
Yeah. All right, let's talk. So you're a professor as well now that you've. Oh, there we go, coffee.
I brought a prop. Maybe me drinking this will help your voice.
I'm drinking tea in this.
What are you? Oh, are you? Oh, let's see. Is that Santa?
Yeah, there you go.
Nice. There you go.
Green tea.
Oh, is it green tea? Oh, that's so nice. Green tea affects me very strongly. It's more strong than coffee to me.
Really? I don't drink coffee myself. I don't know what it would do to me. There you go. You're doing great, by the way. That's what it says in the cup.
You're doing great. We're
Yes.
both doing great.
Also, you're in Sedona right now, which was a coincidence because last time you spoke, I was like, you said you're in Arizona. I was like, wow, have you ever been to Sedona? And you're like, yeah, I am in Sedona, which is amazing.
Yes, and you live here.
How did that happen? How did you end up in Sedona?
Oh my gosh. Well, so I grew up in Arizona. I grew up in a different place in Arizona. I grew up in Tucson, which is it's like one place in the world, or it's like in the desert. This one place in the world that has the cacti that are like this, the saguaro cactus. That's where I grew up. But so Sedona is about 300 miles north of that. And oh my gosh, I mean, Sedona is just it's just so gorgeous. It's so like the vibration here is so high, like you're actually living basically in a crystal.
Yeah.
Basically living in a giant red rock quartz crystal with a creek, and it's so beautiful. I ended up coming to Sedona last year for about 40 days. I came out alone. I had visited before and I had a really positive experience, so I promised myself I would come back. And then when it was time for me to come back, I didn't do it.
Hmm.
And I just like got cold feet and decided not to go. And then the like pressure I felt inside and outside to just do the thing I was scared of doing kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger until I finally was like, all right, fine, I'll just go. I didn't know anyone. I knew one person in Sedona. I never saw them, but I came out here for 40 days by myself and I had an overwhelmingly positive experience.
Yeah. Was this like years ago?
This was last year.
Oh, that's last year. Okay.
So that was
Wow.
part of why I was not sure about traveling, but I like, I did the quarantine thing and I just got myself out here. Yeah.
Oh, so you just traveled just before quarantine. You went to Sedona and you stayed there basically. That's it.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. Like Sedona is one of
Yeah.
my
I want to
favorite
hear about your
places.
experience.
Oh, well, I went there because I went to see a lecture of David Hawkins. So I must have been there in either 2010 or 2011, because that's when he was still doing the lectures. Then he died in 2012. But yeah, so I was there, I think once or twice in Sedona, and I really loved it. It's like you have the red rocks all around the town, and the town is pretty small. It's like 10,000 people. And one time I stayed in this Super 8 hotel, which was, I don't know why. I just remember ordering Domino's pizzas and thought it was so cool. They delivered it right to the hotel door. I gave them the number, and they came right to the door, and it was so cool. And yeah, seeing Dr. Hawkins was obviously the highlight for me. I gave you some. I gave you one video. Did you
I
see?
did.
He was an amazing guy.
Yeah. Was that like an example of the talk that you saw?
Well, that was earlier. I think what I sent you was like the story of him being pulled over by a cop, which was like from 2002. So he was old then, but when I saw him in 2010 and 2011, he was much older. He was like 83, 84. He was way up there.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's unique that he has a scientific mind, and that he became enlightened. But I understand you have a spiritual interest as well. It's not just the psychology that's drawing you, obviously, to Sedona. It's something more, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, to put it lightly. Yeah, I've had a complete reset of my entire life over the last 3 or 4 years, and what I would call a spiritual awakening, where I actually asked for it. I remember there was a point where I was like, yeah, so part of my background is I am very intelligent and I'm a special unique being and I have things I want to do with my life. And when I finished my PhD program, I was so burnt out. I couldn't do anything.
I can't imagine why. I can't.
I can't imagine why that would happen. And so I took basically a year. It took me a year to recover. And then I was like, okay, now I want to do the next phase of my life. I want to do the next things that I want to do, which is I want to write a book and I want to start a YouTube channel and I want to do all these things. But I I couldn't do it. I had so many things that were holding me back. So even though I had achieved my PhD, I'd gone through a specific program where you have a mentor and you have an entire department that is helping you go through these milestones. But the next things I wanted to do, I wanted to do on my own for me. And I couldn't do it. I was like paralyzed. I was like, basically all of like my insecurities started coming to the surface and I cried to spirit and to God. And I was like, I don't know who up there thinks I can do this by myself, but I can't. I need help.
Hmm.
Oh, and I had no idea what I was asking for.
Yeah.
No idea whatsoever. And yeah, that was the beginning of much greater self-awareness in the spiritual realm, which eventually brought me to Sedona.
So in effect, long story short, prayer is effective. It basically brought about what you couldn't do by yourself.
Don't think you're not being listened to. Is what I want. You think no one's listening? No. You're lucky if you think no one's listening. You're being, yeah. Yes, yeah, I have so many beautiful spirits that are around me. Yeah.
You
It's
hold on. You see you see the spirits now?
uh, well, I mean, right now I see you. You're a spirit in a body.
Yeah,
But
but I meant, you know what I meant. I
no,
meant,
I don't see like figures around me.
okay.
But I see like yeah. So there, well, this is like there's different ways that you can be more psychically attuned, like I forget what they're called. The clairs. They're called the clairs. You can be like clairaudient, clairsentient, clair cognizant. And I have different ones of those that I tune into. So like I have feelings that I've learned to pay attention to. I learned to go towards what feels good and stay away from what feels bad or where I'm being blocked. And when I follow that, I have amazing experiences where I run into like the right people at the right time, and that also is scary to do. And then when I don't listen, I end up in tricky, horrible situations I didn't need to be in. For example, that's one way that like I experience spirituality in my daily life and have incorporated it into who I am.
Synchronicities as well, right? When you um, listen to or when you're in the flow, let's say, then things magically appear before you. But when you're not, then maybe, let me see, the opposite appears, like what you don't want. um,
Yeah. You
well,
experience synchronicities?
I would have to say yes, although most of them escape my mind at the current time. But okay, I have one. It was relating to psychology. Before I went to, I'm attending University of Glasgow now, but before I got in, I was attending a 1 year college, what they call in UK, which is basically you get the hires. It's like equivalent to high school, I guess. So we had like 5 different subjects, and I was attending that for a year, and it was amazing. And towards the end, we did all the final papers and all, and this was already in the pandemic, so this was like April, May, June of last year, and I endeavored so hard to do this psychology paper, and like I wrote it like 4 different mini essays, and way more than I had to, and usually I don't do much work, so this was like to me a lot of work. And then the feedback came back that this is too much, and I don't know why I just got um so upset because of that. And as a result of that, for some reason, when I started to meditate, a lot of it will a lot of things happened here, like my neck or whatever. And then for some reason, I started adding a lot of people on Facebook, which I ended up using a lot of those for my podcast that I had added. So that it's just a weird story. I went from 600 friends to 5,000 in a matter of 4 months. I know. I just kept adding
Oh,
people. So yeah, based on that, that was a kind of trigger. I don't know why, but me getting upset was a kind of trigger, and I was like, yeah, I don't care. I just started adding people. Maybe it's a high or something. I don't know. I don't know what it was.
but it sounds like you actually found real connections from doing so.
Yes, unexpectedly so, with a lot of different people, and that was more of a blessing than a curse, I would say, for sure.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But when we talked about prayer, I just want to say that be careful what you wish for as well, because one time, this is 3 years ago, I prayed that I would learn things quicker. So, but this is a very dangerous prayer. I don't recommend that, because what happened was, a long story short, this guy I was working in a hostel, and this guy was he was just out of prison, and when he, I didn't know this, but he was a guest, and he got rowdy with one of my coworkers there, and I ended up having to kick him out. But then before I kicked him out, he decided he's gonna go on his own, and just before he left, he made an issue about towel. It says towel for rent, you see, but he thought he'd get a pound back, which is, I guess, an alcoholic logic. You know, you get a pound back.
Huh.
You rent the towel and you also return the towel and you get the money back. That doesn't make sense. I guess in some way it does. You rent the money as well.
Right, that's
You re-
something different. Yeah,
right.
okay.
You rent the money and then you get it back as you return the towel. Is that how it works? Anyway, so long story short, I got choked, and he tried to rob us. He tried to rob us, basically. Yeah. I did escape quickly, but he slammed my head somewhere, and I was bleeding. But I escaped in about 20 seconds, but it seemed like an eternity, though. It seemed like a long time. So yeah, that's my warning. Be careful with that prayer, basically.
You okay? Your head okay?
Yeah. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Be careful with that prayer. I want to learn more quickly. Okay, I will.
yeah, or maybe that was my karma at the time. I don't know. What's your understanding of karma?
Oh, I definitely have an understanding of karma.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, my understanding of karma is that many of us have, you know, taken too much energy or something like this from certain people or from the world, maybe in this life, maybe in a past life, maybe in another way, and that gets rebalanced eventually, where it's like, oh, maybe in the past you took too much, and so in this lifetime or in this experience you are going to have no choice but to give, and you're not going to understand it. That's part of
Hmm.
my understanding of karma, is like it's not happening on like the here present mental level where you can fully understand it. It's like, I don't know why I needed to do this, but for some reason I needed to do this. So, for example, something I'm learning is to ask for help and to like let myself get help, because I want to do everything on my own. In case you can't tell, I do everything independently. But guess what? I'm living in like a giant world full of a ton of people. I'm not supposed to do everything by myself. I'm supposed to be part of the greater whole. So it's really important for like me to be in the right balance with who I am and with the world to ask for help. And then it's also important for me to give help in the way that is like meant for me to do that. So like I feel like that's part of my karma I'm learning. I've helped people before, and so now I need to allow myself to be helped. And if I was always asking for help, then it would probably be time for me to start helping others.
Hmm.
What about you?
Um, what's the question? Oh, karma.
I don't know.
Karma.
Do you like karma?
um,
Do you think it's cool? I don't know.
I think karma is like basically lessons. It can be viewed as punishment, but I think it's more like lessons. So you I don't know, you can't learn to forgive a certain type of person, and that type of person keeps showing up in your life again and again and again and again, because you don't like or maybe you've done something, or maybe you were that kind of person in a previous lifetime, let's say, and so the roles reverse. Or maybe you keep getting your things stolen, but in a previous lifetime you were a big thief, let's say, and you're like, oh, I'm a good person, why does bad things keep happening to me? Well, you're learning.
Yeah, you're learning. So what do
Yeah.
you do when you like realize something like that is happening? Like what advice would you give if you're like, okay, the same thing keeps happening over and over again? What do you do?
uh I think first of all, not to be naive, like love your brother, but always keep an eye on him, because I think sometimes people they have good intentions, but that doesn't jive with what's really happening in the world. um in psychology, I think in the class we went over the Milgram experiment and the Stanford prison experiment, and those are just scary. I think you know more about them. Let's go there. You want to talk about the
Oh,
Milgram
sure.
experiment? I think it's about a switch or something, or is about the voltage, fake electroshock, right?
That's right.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I talk about both of those in my psych class. It's actually coming up next week in social
Oh,
psychology.
there you go.
Yeah, in social psych, I always say there's two sections of social psychology. One is the positive side, all these cool things we know about how humans interact. And then we also need to look at the dark side, all of these horrible things that we have done to each other just for experiment's sake, for example. So both the Milgram experiment and the Stanford prison experiments are just experiments where we still did horrible things to each other. So the Milgram experiments were experiments that were done after World War II in order
Mhm.
to help understand how the Holocaust could have happened. So a major thing that, okay, so to take a step back, on a global level, there were these world summits after World War II to try and figure out, like, what to do next, but also how did this happen? So how did, like, a bunch of people start extinguishing a bunch of other people? And so people who are actually working at the concentration camps were interviewed. And a big thing that they said about, how could you run a concentration camp? How could you actually kill
Mm.
other people? They would say, I was following orders. I had no choice but to follow these orders. I was under just as much manipulation as everybody else. And this is just the side of the coin I was on.
Right.
Basically, they were saying anybody in my position would have done it. And this is where the Milgram experiments came from, to see if we just obey authority, even to the point of, taking somebody else's life.
Wow.
So yes. And basically that's what the Milgram experiments found again. So in these studies, they set up, it was a fake scenario, but they set up these fake scenarios where if you are the participant, you see an ad around town. So this is like in the late 40s and 50s. You see an ad that says, we're recruiting people for an experiment. We're paying this amount of money. And, you just show up for like an hour.
Mm.
Sometimes they said, it's a local university. But anyway, you would show up and they would give you a random number. And there would be other participants in the room with you that were also given a random number. So it wasn't actually random. You as the participant were always going to be the person obeying authority, potentially
Right.
killing somebody else, but you were made to think that you could have been the victim. So you got a random number and they're like, okay, you're assigned to be the experimenter, to be the questioner. And they would sit you down in this constructed space, which is really effed up. So you would be sat down in front of this like giant board of switches. And this is something like anybody can Google and look at, like a documentary of it, look at images of. It's really like fascinating, actually. So this is a giant board of switches you're sitting in front of, and there's a big glass in front of you. There's another room on the other side of the glass, and there's a person sitting in there.
Mm.
And this person is strapped to a chair with a bunch of electrodes all over them.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you sit down in there, and not only that, but there is an authority figure standing behind you. Often this was a man in a lab coat, although
Mm.
they varied what the authority figure was wearing. But so there's somebody standing like right behind you, and they're like, okay, they're telling you, they're like standing behind your neck, and they're like, okay, here's what you're going to do today. The person in the room has memorized a list of responses. And you're going to ask them a question. You're going to read a series of words, and they need to say the response word. If they get it right, move on. But if they get it wrong, you just need to press one of these buttons. And you're like, oh, press one of these buttons. What's that about? And they're like, we'll administer a shock to punish them.
Right.
Great. Yes. So that's the setup. And basically, that's what participants did. So the participants would sit there and read the series of words. The thing is that the person sitting in the room in the chair was a part of the experiment. This person is usually called the Confederate. They're in on it.
Yeah.
They were faking it. They're an actor. But you as the participant don't know this. And furthermore, the whole experiment is rigged, so the person keeps screwing up and you have to keep shocking them. The thing is, the shocks got successively stronger with each wrong answer. So they'd be like, please move up another voltage. Please move up another voltage. And the person who was being shocked was an actor, but they kept having increasingly painful experiences. They're like emitting like extremely painful emotions to the point where they eventually start screaming like, stop, you're killing me. I don't want to be here. I don't consent to be here anymore. Let me out. Somebody let me out of here. Great. So the participants themselves, like if you're the person in the study administering the shocks, they're obviously generally going through an emotional roller coaster. And often what would happen is the participant themselves would be like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to shock this person. You know, they don't want to be shocked. And the key part of this study is what the authority figure would do. The authority figure would stay standing behind them and would say something very simple, like planned out in the study. They would say something like, please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. You must continue. Please move forward. And they would say things like, you're not allowed to leave. Like you can't quit the experiment. And then, you know, you can actually like watch different versions of this online. There's one version I usually show to my students where the participant is like being really vocal about not wanting to stay. And one thing they say is, you know, who's going to take responsibility if this person dies? And the authority figure says, I'll take responsibility. So what they found, yeah, it's the worst. Yeah. So what they found in the original studies is something like 90% of participants administered some shocks, and over half actually went so far as to kill, not actually kill, but kill the shock the person so much they stopped responding.
They would have killed the person if this was for real.
Yes. Yes. So the aftermath is they tell the participants, obviously, this is what the study was about. You didn't really kill them. But what happened that nobody expected was the long-term consequences for the participants, which is that this like permanently morally damaged them. Wow. So that people who participated in these studies had like long-term depression and anxiety and mental health issues. And for a long time, the Milgram experiments were shut down. So when I took Intro to Psychology, the story was, you know, we don't do these studies anymore because it was immoral. However, in 2017, they restarted the Milgram experiments to see if this was still a real thing. And now basically like all the universities of California have approved them, and they are increasingly done at different universities all over the world. And we find that people still will obey authority in the Milgram experiments.
Wow, that's crazy. So how did they ethically now justify doing these experiments? They're like, for the greater good, we must do the experiments because, you know, it doesn't matter if these people have PTSD and all that. We just want to know the truth, what's happening. Is that what's going on? Or did they get some kind of insurance for these people? They get traumatized?
They should absolutely have some insurance for these people. As far as I know, the part of the logic of how it was approved is that atrocities bigger than this are occurring in everyday life in the world right now, and that it's not like a bigger mental health risk to participate in this study than to just be a person who is like alive and aware of what's happening in the world at this time.
But with that kind of logic, you could justify an experiment of stabbing somebody in the back. We're like,
oh yeah, we just needed to see.
Sorry?
Yeah, we just needed to see what would happen.
Yeah, we just want to study how this kind of blade and this kind of blade and this kind of person, how that happens.
Right. That also seems like it would be taking it too far. I think another thing that was said is that a lot of people and authority figures were claiming that like nothing like the Holocaust could ever happen again because humanity's evolved so much. And so these universities were like, we're going to prove you wrong. People are still susceptible. This is still a part of our human nature, even though it's dark and it sucks.
Did you ever find in the psychology literature the donation of good and evil, that kind of moralistic stance, let's say? That's
there's a lot of talk about those things. So one area of research is that talks about this stuff is the area of moral decision making. So this falls under a pretty new area of philosophy called experimental philosophy, where they're using science to answer philosophical questions. You probably have heard of examples like this, like the trolley problem.
Oh, yeah.
like, yeah, a mental scenario to think about that's a morally ambiguous thing to do.
Right. Which is like something like oh, the trolley. Oh, the trolley is like nothing. It will cost you nothing if you just leave this trolley here. And is that what it is? If you just
So
leave, if you don't take the trolley back, right?
yeah, so that's like one example of the trolley problem. The trolley, let's see, the trolley problem goes like this. There's a trolley coming down the track.
Oh,
There is somebody tied to the track who can't move, and if the trolley keeps going, the trolley will run over them and they will die. This is just a hypothetical scenario. That's not really happening. However, and you're standing there, you're watching this happen. You're standing at the switchboard, and if you want to, you can flip a switch and the trolley will be diverted to an alternate track. However, on the alternate track, there's 5 people tied to the track. And they will die if you divert it. So what do you do?
wow.
Yeah, so there you go. So what do you do?
Well, obviously, the utilitarian point of view would be to kill one person instead of 5, you know.
Nice.
But maybe you should jump down and sacrifice yourself. That would be the highest moral virtue.
Oh my goodness! I can't believe you just said that.
That would be the highest moral virtue, wouldn't it?
So you personally are going to be able to stop the trolley.
Well,
are you Superman? I think you might be.
No, but I'm just saying that maybe that would be part of maybe that would be an answer that's not in the, what would you do, A, B, but people could come up with, I think in extreme circumstances, people do the extreme things that, people have been known to lift cars that normally wouldn't be able to even, lift 100 pounds or 150 pounds or whatever. They're able to lift, substantial amounts of weight. Like, there was a son that was trapped. I think the story goes, the son was trapped under a car that he was fixing, and the mother came and like lifted up the car. Like there's a lot of these stories. Yeah. Superhuman strength in the case when you actually need it, and people summon up this superhuman strength. It's incredible.
Whoa, that is incredible.
Yeah.
Do you think that we always have that strength, or do you think it like comes through us in the moment?
I think it's the moment. Otherwise, yeah, it wouldn't be. Also, people injure themselves as well when they do that. A lot of times, obviously.
Oh.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't want to even say, but you get injuries obviously if you do things that you're not prepared for physically. And well, did you ever read Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled?
Mm-mm.
He talked a lot about good and evil. And but he became religious, and so his point of view was he was a famous psychologist, plus he became religious. So it's a funny thing because in his books, in one of his most famous books, People of the Lie, you know who people of the lie are? Is people who people who are evil, basically.
What is it? People of lie?
People of the lie. Yeah.
People of the lie.
Yeah, like when you ask most people what's the most important thing in your life, they will say myself. But people of the lie will say my self-esteem. So evil people will lie, cheat, or do anything that's in their power to protect their self-esteem, so they don't have to feel bad about themselves. Yeah.
Sounds like operating. Yeah, go ahead.
And he even did like 2 exorcisms, which was then the subject of his other book, A Glimpse of the Devil. And I recommend that because I used to think maybe it's good. You see an exorcism and it's going to prove evils, thereby proving the opposite God. But then I read the book and it was so scary. I was like, nah, this is not worth it, man. It's okay. Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about something that's kind of controversial in today's psychology because at one time I got into an argument with this lady that was studying psychology in Edinburgh, and she said, "Oh, it's a lot of statistics and all that." And I was like, "What about Jung? What about Freud?" And she's like, "Oh, these are old fashioned. They're old fashioned." And I kept pressing the issue, and then she stopped talking to me. But
You didn't invite her on the podcast.
no, no, this was a few years ago. It was actually funny. It was after an improv show.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
but
were in the improv show,
no,
or
no,
you went to
no.
see it?
I went to see it, and she was
Okay.
also seeing it. But yeah, like things like psychoanalysis, Freudian and Jungian are not as popular, I guess, as they once were. Do you have any?
Yeah,
Do you have any knowledge? Like, what's is CBT more popular nowadays than psychoanalysis?
I think it's great that you bring up Freud and Carl Jung, because I think that definitely it's funny because like their name and the idea of saying like I'm a psychoanalyst or I subscribe to Freud's principles has fallen out of fashion, like saying you follow these people. But however, their concepts are super relevant today. So there's two major concepts that come, one that comes from each of them, that I think is like a big part of our cultural conversation right now. So Freud's concept of the ego, especially in the spiritual community, everybody is constantly talking about the ego. And what I would contribute to that discussion is that the ego is part of a larger model. So like so the way it's usually talked about is like operating from your ego is operating like what you were saying, from like the people of the lie, saying I need to come from my self-esteem, like
Yeah.
protecting your sense of self. So your ego is actually a part of a larger structure. And when it's imbalanced and unhealthy, then you're operating purely from your ego, where you're trying to like protect a false story of who you are. And part of like our own personal development is learning about that story and releasing parts of that story that are no longer true. So the larger structure is that we have three parts: the ego, the story of who we are, and like, which includes like our blueprint and our plan of what we're actually doing with our body and our time. So we
Hmm.
actually need that. Then another part of it is our id. So there's the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is our subconscious. These are all of our like bodily needs and desires and things that we've stuffed below the surface. We can like stuff this down there. So in a unhealthy way, we're constantly like stuffing down our emotions and our needs and things that we don't want to see, because our ego is like, this isn't a good story. Us being like pissed off right now isn't going to work. So we're going to have to push that back down.
Yep.
That's not healthy. So you don't want to be pissed off all the time. We need to let it come out at appropriate times.
Yep.
And then the other part of the structure is your super ego, which is part of Freud's structure. Your super ego is like your higher self, or your idea of like who the perfect you ought to be.
Wait. Did Freud said in the exact words higher self? I think he'd probably say something else.
He did higher
No,
self.
no.
Now he's saying it's like a constructed part of your personality structure.
Okay. Like what other people would think you should do. So you take that on, like parents and stuff like that. Society.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah, like what we learn as like school children, like the perfect little student you're supposed to be.
Yeah, in France is really popular. I didn't realize this until I was there. Psychoanalysis, because I knew this girl in France that went twice a week, and it was like not cheap. It was like 60 euros per hour, which is like in dollars like $80 per hour or something. Yeah,
Whoa, that's a lot. Did she experience positive benefits from it?
yeah. She said she understands herself more. Yeah. So, but I guess it's a long process. You have to. Um, yeah, it takes a long time. I also saw that CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is very popular nowadays. But I saw that a lot of studies were comparing CBT to nothing. We're comparing CBT to placebo instead of like I would like to see comparing CBT to psychoanalysis and go at it and see in the long term who's better. You know,
That would be fun to do. That would be fun.
you ever done psychoanalysis?
Oh, I have done some. I've never like done like where I've actually found a therapist and done regular sessions with them. It's more like I tried it out in my training, and I like, sometimes I'll do it with my friends or I'll do it on myself. Something I really like to do from psychoanalysis is free association. So like free association is, you just take anything and you just see what that makes you think and take it to its like ultimate
Oh,
conclusions. My mug says, "You're doing great. What does that make you think? Why? What does that make you think? Why?" And then eventually you're like, "Yeah, so I was crying in the park yesterday and I don't know why and I'm embarrassed."
oh.
It's
Can we
like,
do a short demonstration of this?
yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I guess I'm the patient. You're the expert.
Yes, you are.
Do I
Okay.
close my eyes? That's better.
Okay. Welcome to Dr. Arian's psychotherapy session.
Hmm.
Today we're going to do free association. So you're in a safe space to say whatever comes to mind to me and all of your followers.
Ooh. No pressure at all.
No pressure, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's just an example.
Yeah.
So the idea is I'm going to say a word and you just say the first thing that comes to mind, just whatever feelings or thoughts are associated with that. We'll do a few of them. All right.
Gotcha.
Are you ready? Butterfly.
Grasshopper.
It's wonderful. All right. Let's do another one. Water.
Fire.
Oh my goodness. That's so interesting. We'll have to talk about that. Cool. Okay. Let's do
Is
another
it?
one.
Is it?
That's interesting. Yeah. All right. I'll do one more. How about volcano?
A deep well.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Okay, so you can come back to the moment. Yes, so let's talk about why you thought those things that you thought. One thing I noticed is when I said a water concept, you said fire. And when I said a fire concept, volcano, you said a water thing, a deep well.
Hmm.
Do you feel like there's any area of your life where you're balancing the fire and water?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I feel like part of my life is that I'm balancing certain explosive elements with certain calm elements, you know. I think that's what it is. Is that the takeaway from this? That there's polarity?
Yeah,
Wow,
I love that.
that's crazy.
Yeah. It's I it from what I've read, it said that those are the hardest elements to balance, fire and water.
They are. Oh my God, I need psychoanalysis right now. Who's gonna
You just got it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the other experiment I find more fascinating because I
Oh
think it's
yeah.
done by that Italian sounding guy Zimbardo. Zimbardo, right?
Oh yes. Why don't you talk about this one?
Okay, and correct me if I'm where I go wrong because I don't. It's been a while. So this experiment basically is they got a group of students together. This was a paid experiment, and they got them to be, and they assigned them roles. So I think all of them were in the experiment, right? And they were, and some of them were prisoners, and some of them were guards, and and these people were supposed to be in for I don't know a week or so. And but the thing is that things started to go really wrong really fast, and people started to get more cruel as the days went by because this was like nonstop. They were just inside there. There was no break, and this was like it was like a hardcore method acting, like people were in their roles. And what usually happens is that there was a push and pull. So the prisoners would misbehave, let's say, and the prison guards would be more cruel because of that. They would like to try to enforce the rules, and they had to. I think they had to finish the experiment in about 3 days because there was just weird stuff happening that they were. It was just too much, and I think his wife came, Zimbardo's wife came there, and or somebody, maybe his wife to be or something came there, and she's like, "Nah, this is too much," and so they pulled the plug. That's the long story short of what I remember from it.
Good job. Good job.
What did I miss out? What did
Yeah.
I leave out?
Let's see. What I would add is, so the Zimbardo prison experiment. Yeah, so it's done by Dr. Zimbardo at Stanford. And it was originally meant to be another study about like obedience to authority. Let's see some weird things that they did. So yeah, everybody, like you said, everybody's recruited equally. Like you're randomly deciding who's going to be the cop, who's going to be the prisoner.
Yeah.
But they also they took it really far in helping people get into their roles. So the people who were going to be the cops, they brought them in ahead of time and like told them to take ownership of the prison. They got to pick out their own outfit and
man.
bond and do like male bonding stuff. I don't know about that. And then the prisoners, you would know more about that, whatever that is. And then the prisoners, they had actual real campus police pick them up and handcuff them and bring them to the study.
Oh, wow.
So that's already outside the bounds of a typical experiment. But anyway, yeah, just what you said happened in the study. Like it was not supposed to go that long, but it went for a really long time, went really far. So again, like anybody who's more interested in it, I would say, watch some videos so you can see like footage of what really happened in there. But it went like on the psychological level, what was happening is that the prisoners were getting stripped of their identity, where they were literally not identifying as their birth name anymore. They were identifying as like prisoner number something something something.
Oh my gosh.
They were doing extremely degrading activities that the prison guards were having them do. They were put into solitary isolation. They were being tortured. They were being stripped of their clothes. They were being made to like sit in their own feces. They were being made to like abuse other prisoners. It was insane. It got out of hand. And yeah, Zimbardo was just sitting back and watching. So
this is great research. This is great research.
Yeah, he's like, my career is something. I don't know if he's thinking about his career, but he just like let it run. I don't think anybody thought it would go where it went. But yeah, what I heard is that it's one of the grad students who was running the study. His girlfriend came to deliver a sandwich and was like, what is going on here? And she had to like call campus authorities to get them to shut it down. Wow. So, and then they reported what happened.
Yeah, and then he wrote a report, study, and then he also wrote a book about it, I think. Didn't he write the Lucifer Effect or something like that as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great experiment, but ethically nowadays it wouldn't pass the ethics. What do you have, commissions or something? Like it wouldn't pass that. I think. Has there any similar experiment been done since?
Let's see. Yes. So there's always a human subjects approval board that's approving if anybody is going to be harmed by the study that's going on. I actually don't know of like similar types of full immersion experiments. I mean, there's definitely a history of these types of things. So another thing you could look into is the history of the Unabomber. So the person who ended up becoming the Unabomber, you may already know this, but he was the subject of like a private study. He was a Harvard student who was tortured for years as part of a Harvard study.
Oh my gosh, I did not know this.
Mm-hmm. And then when he got completely out of control, they just like released him into the wild. And that's like literally the origin story of the Unabomber. So that's another example of like the dark history of psychology research experiments where, yes, we are learning about the dark side of humanity, but the truth is we're not doing it in a bubble. We're doing it with like real people in the real world.
Yeah, to paraphrase an economist, Thomas Sowell, When there's a modern disaster, there's always a Harvard man in the midst. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Ivy League schools myself, but I'll leave that to another podcast.
All right.
Um, let me see. Do you have I know there must be some research on resentments. I think resentments are such a
Hmm.
I find myself obviously in my personal life, when I have resentments, I think I have a few right now, but when I have like a really like a burning one, especially when somebody's like really close by, oh man, that's I don't know. I feel like it raises your blood pressure. It does physical things as well. Is there a correlation between high blood pressure and resentments?
Yes, there is actually.
Hmm.
Yeah, holding on to resentments or like long-term negative emotions or grudges is correlated with heart disease.
Oh man. Yeah, I bet.
Actually,
I better
yeah.
give that.
Yeah, it's also correlated with like a higher body fat content. And one of the theories about that is like your body is storing that information.
Oh wow. Why wait? So this would be a great weight loss experiment would be forgive and you don't have to do anything else but forgive and then you're gonna lose weight.
Yeah,
Wow. I never
yeah,
correlated those two together. So maybe
yeah.
that's why people there's a great quote also by my favorite economist Thomas Sowell because uh sometimes he used to write a column. It was like called something like "Passing Thoughts on Everything," and once he wrote that most people when they age, some people when they age, they turn into fine wine, while others turn into vinegar. So I guess those people that turn into vinegar, those are the people that get fat usually. is that is that
Yes.
what it
That
is?
can be like the tagline of your forgiveness weight loss course.
Wow. Be,
I love that. Well, one thing
forgive
I would say, yeah, go ahead.
forgive or get fat. Or forgive or stay fat. That's oh my gosh, that would be bad.
That's very powerful branding, my friend.
It
I love
is.
it's
It
very
is.
powerful.
I mean, it has to be a catching tagline, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
definitely gonna attract a target audience with that.
And maybe some lawsuits or some people that would be try to cancel me as well.
Right. They're like, I actually don't have any resentments. Can I resent you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't have any resentments at all, but I really hate you, so but that's okay.
Yeah, somebody who has like a bad reputation should run this one.
Yeah, like
Well, one thing I would say about resentments is like, you know, definitely we can hold on to things from the past that we should let go of, but there also can be people who are like in our, or at least I'm speaking of myself here, but like there can be people who are in my current life who keep violating my boundaries or they keep hurting me. And in those cases, it's important to, like I have found it's been a struggle, but I've learned I have to first protect myself. I have to first be like, no, there's a boundary. No, you can't hurt me anymore. Like actually take care of that relationship so I'm not being harmed anymore. And then I can work on forgiveness and peace. But like just telling yourself like you shouldn't be resentful of a situation that's like ongoing and not good. At least for me, I've had to learn like, oh great, I have to actually go face this and tell this person like and actually do the work being like, nope, this is my space here, I'm safe here. Then you can be like, oh okay.
yeah, it'd be hard to forgive when somebody's. I think it's not loving to yourself to have to be exploited and taken advantage of, and I think that's a misconception. People think, oh, it's bad to because the boundary sounds like a wall. You're creating a wall, but yeah, you have to like some people are just bad. You have to have your space. Even ants have a place to sleep. I think if they if they sleep. Um, so what kind of so obviously studying psychology, you found that Are there certain things that you kind of strongly disagree and think psychology is still way behind on this particular subject?
Oh, are you asking for my opinion?
Yeah.
Great. Oh, so are you wondering if I have any resentments towards psychology? Yes, I do.
Yeah. That's it. Do you have any hatred towards psychology that you teach and, and profit from?
Yeah, absolutely I do. Oh my gosh. No, this is a great question. I would say there's like, okay, yes, I do have a thing. I do have a thing I would love to talk about, which is this concept that I call knowledge politics.
Hmm.
So right now, part of our like cultural conversation is the concept of fake news or like false research. And so, as somebody who is a full scientist, like I'm a full cognitive scientist, I'm a full data scientist. I fully understand how the scientific method works on people. Like that's my passion. That's my job. I think that the scientific method is a wonderful tool. And I don't want anybody to like hear what I'm saying and be like, oh, all research is fake and BS and we shouldn't believe that. That's definitely not true. But from the perspective of, okay, so we're doing science on people, we're getting real data, we're doing this research in a diligent way. Then what happens next? So what happens next is where there are some gray areas where I personally have like my own ideological problems. So what happens after, like, let's say you do your skydiving research study, which sounds very fascinating. Let's say you do this research study and you're very diligent about collecting the data and you do all the approval ahead of time and you record everything and then you go to report the study. What happens next is you want to report this study generally in an academic journal in order for it to be accepted as actual data, as part of like our greater body of knowledge of what's occurred. However, it's not guaranteed that the research that you've done is ever going to be published anywhere. Also, it's not guaranteed that the way you've researched this project is going to be the way that it's presented. So the journals and the people who are running the journals have authority over which information gets approved as actual science and how that information is presented. So this is not a problem that's just come up today. This is a really long-standing set of issues. So one issue, it's called the file drawer problem, which is like a researcher does a cool study, nobody wants to publish it, so they put it in the file drawer. Mm. But part of the greater issue is that is real, actual information about what's going on. So, journals, they want to sell copies. They want to have like the most exciting, sensational studies come out. But one of the problems of this is that we don't know all the information. We're only seeing like cool things that the researchers somebody thinks is cool, but you might think something in the file drawer is cool or important. But not only that, another thing that happens is that, you can tell I'm really passionate about this. Another thing that happens is just because of the way that our minds work, research that lines up with the way that we already think about the world and about psychology tends to be published more. And research that challenges the way that we think is published less. And so a few years ago, there were a bunch of like issues in how psychology research specifically and other fields were presented in the media, basically showing that, there's like cheating and scheming going on. Like there were actual real big time researchers who were fabricating data and using it to like prove greater philosophical points, which were very meaningful to the field. And this broke my little heart because I am like a knowledge idealist. Like I care about knowledge and information. So like, do I like talking about the Milgram experiments and then Zimbardo experiments? No, that's freaking horrible. That's awful. But I actually do like talking about it because it's the truth. It uses actual real information about our humanity. And I think that it is like I think that knowledge is our birthright. I think knowledge doesn't belong to any one person. And so there are efforts out there to help revolutionize like the way, not just psychology research, definitely psychology research, but all types of research is documented and published. And there are efforts out there to try and improve this system. But on a much larger level, science and psychology science research is just ripe for a change, for a revolution, just like so many other systems that are on our planet. Like I do want to see if I'm really researching something, I do want to see all the failed experiments that look stupid and dumb. And yeah, so we get to be the ones who are alive right now. We get to be the ones who help build a system where we get to see what we want to see. We do the types of research that we deem are important and hopefully have a greater level of transparency. But yeah, those are some of the issues that the field has been wrestling with since I've come up into the system, and I do feel passionately about them.
So there's a sense of there's a confirmation bias within uh, your field of academia and probably all of the rest, because they all have, if the peers don't agree with what you've researched, then it doesn't appear in the journal, because the peers that review it don't agree that it's insightful, because oftentimes if it doesn't agree, if it's too far outside what the mainstream field of that academic field thinks, then they disregard it.
Yes, this is a real pitfall that's happened many
Wow.
times.
So
And
they become dogmatic. They become dogmatic, basically.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. And part of it is like, because it's like a part of our human nature to accept what matches what we know and reject what we don't want to confront. And so like that gets compounded out into research. So that's part of like the projects to improve what's going on, is like literally like I've been sent surveys by some of these organizations that are like, hey, can you take an anonymous survey telling us if you've ever lied or cheated in your research? Like legit. So there are people who are trying to improve it, but yeah, that's part of the idea, is that like what we deem as like the truth from science can become dogmatic, and it's a problem.
Right. Well, what is the truth? That's the whole issue. Then, what is the truth? Like, I feel like, do you know Rupert Sheldrake? He did experiments on dogs and stuff, and people that, um, you know how sometimes you receive a call and before you look at the ID, you know who's calling you without
Oh yeah.
having. Yeah, well, he did those experiments on, like, you name four people that you're the closest with, and statistically you get 25%, right? But
Mm-hmm.
he gets that, because people name the people that they're really close, and he gets 45%. So that's a significant statistical deviation. But the research like that that Sheldrake does is not would not be in the mainstream, because they'd be like, well, we don't know what's going on. We can't we can't even begin to grasp what's going on. Yeah, so that's
Wow, that's really cool.
yeah, so things like that are um so okay, people sometimes online attack other people for having cognitive dissonance. So can you explain, like, I often heard this term, but can you explain to the audience what exactly it is? Maybe there's some misconceptions about this.
You're asking me to talk about all my favorite things. This is great.
Oh, all right.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So cognitive dissonance in research is a very specific thing that we do. It can be used in a more general term, but this is what cognitive dissonance is, which is cognitive dissonance is the feeling that we get when our actions misalign with our concept of who we are.
Hmm.
So, for example, like my concept of who I am is I'm a healthy person. I value my health. I value my health so much. That's my self-concept. Meanwhile, I'm drinking this coffee. I'm drinking this substance in here, this caffeine. So if somebody comes along, or I read an article, or let's say somebody actually comes up and confronts me, because that would be stronger, and they're like, hey, why are you drinking that? I thought you valued your health. Don't you know this stimulates your fight or flight response, and overall coffee can be bad for you, and it might make you feel more stressed out? Do you know it's not really healthy? And do you know it's also like not that good for the planet? Do you even know what the sources of your coffee? Yeah, you probably shouldn't be drinking that. So this moment where you're like, what? That's cognitive dissonance. So the idea, like, this is actually kind of harkening back to what we were talking about at the beginning. This is where like your mental side and your emotional side are at a split. Like my mind is like, wait a second, I don't want to damage the systems of the earth and I don't want to hurt my body. Meanwhile, I do like coffee, so those don't really match. And the other side, my emotions are like, F you, don't talk to me, I hate you, get out of here, I'm fine, everything's fine.
I'll be the devil's advocate. I don't drink coffee, so
Here,
I have no
I'll
stake in the
green tea.
matter. But I think with coffee is complicated because there's studies saying that it's good and there's other studies saying it's bad. So if you go with something more like sugar or something like that, like so if you replace
Sounds
coffee
pretty
with
no.
sugar, then it would be like what you're saying you're healthy, but you're eating all this sugar. Like I've just had like gummy bears just like an hour ago, like but I'm not claiming to be too healthy. I'm just
Well, then you've avoided the cognitive dissonance.
right,
Yeah, that would
right.
be a good example. Yeah.
Or if somebody okay, a good example, somebody goes to yoga and then after yoga, they go to the store and get a Snickers. And then somebody would be like, you're pretending to be healthy and yet you're eating Snickers.
Yeah, you're drinking your almond milk and smoking a cigarette. Yes.
You're running a marathon and you're doing cocaine.
Right? Yeah, that would be another. Hang on a second.
What? That's too much.
Yes, so like how we feel right now, that's cognitive dissonance, where yeah, your emotions and your mind split from each other.
Okay, I want to go specifically into, let's say I'm saying that okay, let's see. I'm saying that Donald Trump was the greatest president ever, and somebody online comes and says, "No, this is your cognitive dissonance because he's not what America is about." Or so I'm
That's
interested in
like something that's happened in real life.
yes, I'm interested in what in the argument itself, like where is the cognitive dissonance there? I understand the behavior. What about, is it something, let's say if I claim that America is the greatest country in the world, but then also have criticism, is that cognitive dissonance or what exactly is it there?
So I think that like the way cognitive dissonance is used online or just more casually is often we say this to another usually you're saying it to another person.
Yeah.
But often we say this when we can see how somebody's like what they're saying and other information in the world doesn't match up. We're saying, yeah, but it doesn't. So basically you're saying like, hey, you're not admitting some truths to yourself. The problem with that, however, is like you can't actually force anybody else to see anything your way. We can only all see things from our own perspective. Even if you are trying to understand somebody else as best you can, you're still only understanding that from your own perspective. So I think cognitive dissonance is often used as a way to be like, you're just like basically telling somebody they're unintelligent to try and force them to take your viewpoint.
Yeah, it's not an effective way to persuade somebody.
Right. It can be a way of intelligently telling somebody they're being an asshole, which may
Right.
indeed be true.
It's basically saying you're a hypocrite, basically. You're saying one thing and doing another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I
Oh,
think another thing that goes on is like, there's so much information available in the world right now. Like there are so many like atrocities of humanity that are coming to light over the past few years because of the internet and because the bravery of people to report it and the bravery of people to see it. There are so many things I don't know about yet. So I could be doing something that actually is damaging or harmful to a certain system. And I truly don't know that information. And so somebody could come to me and be like, hey, Erienne, you're, promoting something. Meanwhile, that's actually bad for this other reason. Are you seriously telling us you don't know about this? Right.
yeah.
So I think that's another thing that like is going on.
Yeah, I reserve the right to not know everything. Like,
I love that, and I'm writing that down.
we don't have to know everything. And the thing is, I've taken some strong positions on things, but you don't always know what's right or wrong. Last thing I want to talk about is the effect of the physical environment. Is there any? Is there any research confirming saging your place is beneficial?
Oh, wait, I actually don't know.
You don't know. Okay,
Yeah.
this would be interesting because I've some people say that it makes the ear cleaner apparently. So that's from the kind of chemical biological viewpoint, whatever. But then there's also the spiritual that says that you're uh, repelling the negative energies from your place.
Right.
Yeah, you probably heard that, right? It's like
Yeah.
yeah, because I use sage usually, and it seems to be good. Things like that. I think people should study things like that as well. That's kind of outside, but people still use in ordinary life. What about like the kind of environment people stay in? Well, what is their feeling or the research on that?
So, uh, absolutely, the environment hugely determines our experience. There's one perspective in personality research. I mean, this is actually coming from multiple perspectives, but it's coming from something called social cognitive theory. Social cognitive theory says that our personality is basically, I mean, the strongest claim here. I'm not saying any individual researcher is saying this. The strongest claim is that your personality is just something you construct in the moment to fit the environment and your needs.
Hmm.
So it's basically saying, like, who even cares if you have a personality on the inside? The point of your personality is to like shape and shift and morph to different situations. So I have like my coffee shop personality to get the coffee I want. I have my podcast personality. I have my personality to talk to my roommate about groceries. I have my personality like, and that like that's literally what personality is. So it's saying environment is so important, it literally like determines who you become.
Wow, it's like persona, like in Jung, Carl Jung, so talked about different masks we put on.
Yes, yes,
Wow,
yes,
and that's all tied into survival.
yes, yeah, and our social survival. So it's like
Hmm.
we all know like hunger and thirst are necessary mechanisms for us to have to stay alive, but research also now considers loneliness to be a real drive. So our need for social connection, social support is just as important for our survival as thirst and hunger. And we actually feel real pain when we are socially ostracized. I think this is like a crisis or trauma many of us have gone through in the last year,
Oh yeah.
needing to be isolated for different reasons. And part of that is like, yeah, we need other people to survive, but that's also like a part of who we are is the environment and the people around us and what we're immersed in. That's part of our real experience and we need it.
Yeah, I think if somebody, even if you go to school and if you have no friends and if you ostracize, I think the kind of experience you have would be way worse than if you had like good friends. And because that just makes you feel good. You see friends and you kind of, you know, so people don't realize how detrimental that is. I'm speaking from some personal experience where I've had time periods where I didn't have many friends or was kind of alone. So I can yeah, there's definitely that. Um, is there anything that else you want to talk about before we close? I always like to ask this question to give it up to the guest.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I absolutely love being on your podcast. This was so much fun.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love. I also love that you're in Sedona. That's just a great coincidence. It's amazing.
Yeah. Would
Um,
you consider coming back to visit Sedona sometime?
yeah, I mean, right now the world is in a weird place. I don't know even know if I don't even know if they're allowing flights from Europe. They probably are right now. Oh, my camera is acting up, but I think it's still
Oh,
working. Yeah, there we go. We're back.
well, Sedona's calling you if you feel like visiting again, but it was just so cool that you recognize where I am. Yeah.
I
I
didn't.
definitely feel like Sedona helped bring us together.
Yeah, I didn't really know that you were. I thought first you were maybe someplace else. I thought maybe East Coast, but then I saw the red rocks. I was like, oh wow, this is looks quite warm there.
Yeah. Well, I actually did just move from the East Coast over here.
Hmm.
So you're
Cool.
right about that. Yeah.
Well, it was great having you on the podcast, Irene.
Oh my
And
gosh.
thank you, everybody, for listening and watching the podcast.